When did he didn't say they were ignorant. Again, you're adding like it's so slight. It's so small. But he didn't say they were ignorant. This is not good. When you do this, you necessarily misunderstand what the other guy is saying because you aren't even assuming their premises insofar as it's necessary to understand the true intent and meaning of their argument. He didn't say it was definitive. He didn't say anything untrue. He gave his opinion. And maybe he'll explain why giving an opinion as a political commentator is wrong in a second. But again, mountains on a molehill so far.
Michael.
So, this is a style of video I haven't done before, mostly because I feel like we're getting a little bit too Inception-y. The video is created by a channel called Rationality Rules. It touches on a lot of the same issues that I am interested in. And this video is super weird. So, for those who don't know, my education is primarily in rhetoric, getting involved in politics directly. So Rationality Rules provides a nice buffer between me and Michael Knowles himself that allows me to kind of keep the content at arm's length while more talking about the rhetoric. So that's what we're going to do. And we're also going to talk about his points. So I hope this is a different kind of video. Again, I hope you enjoy.
A horrific shooting in Nashville leaves 3 little kids and 3 adults dead. The victims were students and teachers at a Christian school. The shooter was a 28-year-old woman who identified as a transgender man. We don't know much about the shooter's motives, but that has not stopped people, particularly liberals, from reading from their perennial script to blame guns and the Second Amendment for the evil actions of criminals.
All right, let's make some things clear.
So far, so good to me. By the way, for those who don't know, I'm pretty sure the manifesto has not yet been released, which is weird because they usually are. I'm not going to draw any further implications from that. I will just put that fact out to you.
I'm not here to present my views on gun control, nor am I here to discuss the rights of trans people or the surrounding political discourse. And of course, I strongly condemn anyone who inflicts...
Saying rights of trans people in terms of a rhetorical choice kind of gives away his positions there, which I'm sure he's fine with, but that's kind of interesting.
Violence, especially in schools, against children. No, I'm here to talk about the Daily Wire's journalism. I'm here to analyse their take on the tragic Covenant School shooting. I'm here to take note of how they've immediately turned a tragedy into an opportunity to spread hate against a minority and further denigrate people.
Okay. Okay. I want to note 2 things. One, he said journalism, which is fine because that's part of what the Daily Wire does. But the Daily Wire does not just report the news, it also comments on it. I have a sneaking suspicion that he's going to refer back to this incomplete frame multiple times to make some points. I have a sneaking suspicion this is going to be the case. So we'll find out. Number 2, hold on. What do you say again specifically?
And a tragedy into an opportunity to spread hate against a minority and further denigrate people who are not even involved, despite...
Okay, denigrate hate against a minority. I assume he's talking about transgender individuals. Again, this is lame. Do you know why it's lame? Here's why it's lame. People on the left believe that transgender individuals are a minority because they believe that transgenderism is something inherent, akin to race in some ways, in that way. Right-wingers believe that transgenderism is an ideology and also a mental disorder, and therefore would not categorize its people who are transgender as members of a minority community, but as people with a condition or with a deep-set belief, right? I'm not telling you which one of those is correct right now. I'm telling you the difference. When he says that conservatives are spreading hate against a minority, he is assuming the leftist premise in order to attack the right-wing position. This is not good. When you do this, you necessarily misunderstand what the other guy is saying because you aren't even assuming their premises insofar as it's necessary to understand the true intent and meaning of their argument. You don't have to assume their premises overall, but you do have to understand their premises, what they're standing on, to understand what they're saying. And already here, it's evident that he's not sharing that. Maybe he will when he starts to analyze Knowles, but again, I have a sneaking suspicion he's not going to. So let's keep going.
Their frequent complaint of others politicizing things, can you believe it? They do it themselves.
That one's actually fair. Conservatives have long stood on principle. They would complain about people politicizing things and then not do it themselves. They complain about hypocrisy, not do it, wielding power, not do it. Now, largely through the rise of the Daily Wire and the kind of resurgence of conservatives in like the battlefield, let's say, in terms of really fighting instead of, just standing on principle and taking whatever happens. Yeah, they've gotten slightly hypocritical as well. That's I actually agree with that. That's part of the nature of winning in politics now, unfortunately. But I wish it wasn't that way. Maybe it doesn't have to be that way forever. But yeah, he's actually right about that.
The Wire has already published 5 articles on the topic, each with similar issues, but the most notable example of their journalism is from Michael Knowles, which we'll get to now.
But even if we didn't know anything at all about this shooter, we would know that the fault could not lie with the Second Amendment and guns.
Michael opens by claiming that guns are not a topic of relevance.
Wrong.
He did not say they weren't relevant. That's not true. What he said, hold on, let's check the tape real quick.
Second, know that the fault
Points out that
he didn't say it wasn't relevant. He said the fault, which is not really the same thing. Relevance means that it's an issue that's associated, that should be discussed. Fault implies responsibility. Guns are inanimate objects. Fault is the word he used. I always assume people are precise with their speech. This is a mischaracterization of what he said.
guns have been around for a long time.
Guns which have been around for about 1,000 years.
And he continues by claiming that somehow guns haven't become more lethal in the last century.
No. Over the past 100 years, guns have not changed much at all.
But again,
So this is weird because both of them are being slightly imprecise. Knowles, it depends on how much you mean changed much at all. What I think the smarter version of what Knowles is saying is that the killing capacity of guns in the last 100 years does not alone explain the far larger increase in mass shootings. Basically, the argument is that the technological increase in lethality is not proportional to the amount of actual killings, that the killings is actually disproportional. Whether or not that's true, I'm not sure. I have to look into it. But just in terms of understanding what they're actually trying to say with the most kind of good faith, genuine lens to understand another person, that's kind of how I take it.
I'm not interested in debating gun control here. I'm interested in narrative and journalism. And on this note, what Michael has done here is express a view his audience broadly agrees with. He's made it clear from the outset that anyone talking about guns when mass shootings occur are ignorant.
Wrong.
Thus, Michael is
When did he say? He didn't say they were ignorant. Again, you're adding it's so slight. It's so small. But he didn't say they were ignorant. He said that the guns weren't at fault because they're and I filled that in. Of course they're not at fault. They're not inanimate objects. And they're inanimate objects, and that guns have not changed enough. This is just an argument. This is an argument that he's making. He's not saying that anybody who disagrees with this is like a big, stupid, ignorant dummy head. He's just making the argument that he doesn't think that's what it is. He's taking a position in a political argument. It's a political commentary show, man. It's okay. It's okay for him to say, "Oh, I think this is true. Here's one of the reasons." That doesn't mean he necessarily thinks everyone who disagrees with him is super ignorant in any especially negative way. I honestly don't know how he could have made that argument in a more germane sense other than being a little bit more specific with the word fault.
I'm only going to say this one more time, sir. Calm down.
Yeah.
effectively dismissing one of the primary points of contention that his opposition has. But don't worry, he follows this up.
Okay, yeah, he dismisses it because he doesn't believe it. So, political commentary, showman.
With gleaming conviction by telling us what are the actual problems.
Okay, so if that was just set up, then I'll excuse it.
Conceptions of mental health, on the other hand, and spiritual reality, and political institutions have all transformed almost beyond recognition. The root causes of our social rot remain unaddressed, and we all just wait for the next predictable tragedy.
Now, that's some colourful language, huh? According to Michael, gun control isn't a relevant topic of discussion.
He didn't say relevant.
When talking about school shootings. The relevant topics are mental health, spiritual reality, and political institutions. Pretty vague, right? So what specifically does he mean by these words?
Well, first of all, there's kind of a... You don't actually have to be a conservative to believe this, by the way. Lots of people... It's not an unreasonable position to say the equipment doing the killing is not so important as the motivation of the killers. And the motivation of the killers to do something so horrible may come from mental health issues, may come from a tearing of the social fabric that allows people with these deep-seated problems to fall through the cracks, the deterioration of political institutions. Like, this is all very, like, normal stuff. I assume he's driving at something because I actually respect this guy as much as I disagree with him. I respect him so far from what I've seen. But if this isn't set up, he's making a bit of a mountain out of a molehill here, I think.
Well, he gets more clearer as time goes on. As we're going to see, he paints all trans people as mentally ill.
So what does a transgender identifying person mean? Does that mean a man who's pretending to be a woman? Does that mean a woman pretending to be a man? Does that mean a woman who's pumped full of testosterone?
And despite, as of the time of recording, there being no definitive link of the perpetrator's trans identity being relevant to the motive, Michael insists that it is.
So, hold on, let's let him keep going.
What's more, he incessantly conflates the killer's horrific actions with all things trans.
The curious timing of this attack is that it coincides within a few days of a planned national event called the Trans Day of Vengeance.
But when it comes to how to tackle the issue...
So, hold on, I want to hear what he said again. What he said to lead up to this. It's like, again, the thing is that they're always like very small things, so I gotta make sure I'm because he characterized what Knowles said before Knowles said it, so.
At the time of recording, there being no definitive link of the perpetrator's trans identity being relevant to the motive.
Yeah, it's a commentary show. There is no definitive link, but because he's a political commentator, he's taking an issue and then putting out another thing, which is the Trans Day of Vengeance, and saying, that's curious. Maybe there's a link there. He didn't say it was definitive. He didn't say anything untrue. He gave his opinion. And maybe he'll explain why giving an opinion as a political commentator is wrong in a second. But again, mountains on a molehill so far.
Michael insists that it is.
Wrong.
Yeah, he didn't insist the link was definitive. He said, oh, look at that's curious, that coincidence there. Yeah, again, it's just very small mischaracterizations of what he's actually saying.
But when it comes to how to tackle the issue as he sees it, Michael is elusive in his language. But if we skip to his conclusion, it becomes a tad clearer.
And
elusive in his okay, this is kind of the stochastic terrorism idea. We're gonna do a video on this. If it's not already up, if this video ever goes out, if it's not already up, it will be soon, because stochastic terrorism, the dog whistle thing, it's a touchy subject. I generally try not to use it for a variety of reasons.
when ideas pervade the culture that convince you to deny reality and to pursue fantasy, and the deeper that you pursue fantasy, the more angry you should become. And you will become, because when we live according to lies, we become very frustrated because the reality doesn't match up with what's in our mind.
Okay, so this isn't really that elusive, and I guess he's less elusive than he was in the middle, according to Mr. Rationality Rules. But yeah, this is a basic conservative position, is that transgenderism is an ideology and a mental disorder. Not telling you whether or not you should believe that. I will probably never make a video on this, but that's not the point right now. He's saying that if you believe this, if you're part of this, then you're in contrary to reality. Being in contrary to reality makes you angry. And
Minds. That is demonic. That's all that is.
Right then, so by mental health, spiritual reality, and political institutions, Michael means that trans people deny reality, pursue fantasy, and are angry because they're living according to lies.
That's all that is.
Ignoring that one could apply this exact rhetoric to Michael and Christians, they're all denying reality, pursuing fantasy, and are angry because others don't want to live their lies.
You could make that argument, sure. I think you would have a little bit less evidence, probably. But again, that's up to you. But again, he's allowed to say that because this man also happens to be a commentator. It's almost like commentators can have opinions on things. And I disagree with this guy's opinion, but I would not say his commentary is absurd, as the headline says here. So again, curious where he's driving with this.
We'll continue. Trans people are, so far as Michael is concerned, demonic.
Wrong.
And he suggests...
No, he didn't. He did not say that. He said, this is also a thing. Big part of Christianity, because Michael is the Roman Catholic, is hate the sin, not the sinner. Hate the sin, not the sinner. He's not calling trans people demonic in the sense that they personally are demonic. He's calling the pattern of behavior that they are engaging in demonic, because basically you're fighting reality and you're angry about it. Again, this is Lucifer again, and this actually, if you believe in Christianity, this is literally the same journey that Lucifer goes on. Like, Lucifer denies the authority of God, says he'd rather rule in hell than serve in heaven, which is the equivalent of saying, I'd rather make up my own rules apart from the good and apart from reality than have to live under the constraints of the good and reality. So Michael is right that this pattern of behavior, in terms of denying reality, pursuing fantasy, makes you angry. He's right. That's definitionally demonic in the Christian sense. But that doesn't mean he thinks all transgender people are personally demonic. It's just the ideology, because Christians separate the patterns of behavior, the sin, from the sinner, because they believe in redemption. So, again, very small conflations here by Mr. Rationality Rules, but that tends to add up.
That we see.